The cell was cold and silent. Metal walls pressed in from all sides and a dim light flickered above. The alien woman sat on the hard floor, her back against the wall, her eyes half closed. Her body was weak, but it was not her body that carried the true weight. It was her spirit. Her people had once lived free, proud of their songs, proud of their sky. Now all of it was gone. She lowered her head, letting her hair fall forward to hide her face. She did not want the guards to see her eyes anymore. They had already taken everything from her family, her friends, her home. Soon they would take her life as well. The Empire never spared prisoners. The sound of boots echoed in the corridor outside, heavy, sharp, iron-like steps. The guards walked past her cell, laughing at something in their own language. She did not raise her head to look. There was no reason. She knew what they would say. They always called her weak. They told her that she would be forgotten. They wanted her to die with her face to the floor, as if even in her last breath she was nothing. She thought about resisting one last time, maybe screaming at them when they came. But what was the use? Screams would fade and her voice would die with her. So she made a choice inside her heart. When they came for her, she would not resist. She would bow her head and accept death. She thought maybe it would be quicker that way. The hours passed slowly. The flickering light above buzzed like an insect. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the smell of her world's forests, the warm wind across the hills, the laughter of her brother when they played as children. The memories hurt, but they were all she had left. Then, when the corridor grew silent again, she heard something new, a voice. It was not the deep voice of the guards. It was not cruel nor mocking. It was soft, calm, almost gentle, and it spoke in a tongue she barely knew but could understand. Heads up. Her eyes opened. Slowly, uncertainly, she lifted her head. At first she thought she was dreaming. Standing just outside the bars was a figure not dressed in the Empire's armor. His clothing was dark, simple, worn from travel. His skin was pale compared to hers, and his eyes were different. They did not look at her with hatred or pride. They looked at her with something she had not seen in so long she nearly forgot the word for it. Hope. She blinked and shook her head, trying to clear her vision. Who are you?" she whispered. The man smiled, not with arrogance but with quiet warmth. "A friend," he said, "and I think you've had your head lowered long enough." She stared at him, her mind struggling to understand. This was impossible. No one came into the Empire's prisons, no one escaped them. And yet here he was, standing outside her cell, speaking as if he belonged there. Her heart raced. "Why are you here?" she asked. "To get you out," he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. She laughed, but it was a weak, broken sound. "You cannot free me. The Empire controls everything. Their walls cannot be broken." He tilted his head slightly. "Walls can be climbed. Locks can be opened, and fear—" He leaned closer to the bars, lowering his voice. "Fear can be beaten, but only if you look up." She did not know what to say. This human, for he was human, one of the strange newcomers whispered about across the stars, stood there as if the Empire was nothing more than an obstacle to step around. For a moment, she felt anger. Why did he look so calm? Did he not understand the power of their captors? Did he not see how much had already been lost? "You do not know them," she said bitterly. "You do not know what they can do." He shook his head. "I don't need to know what they can do. I only need to know what we can do." The words struck her strangely. They sounded simple, even foolish, yet in the way he said them she felt something stir inside her chest. "Who sent you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No one," he said. "I'm here because I choose to be, because you shouldn't have to die with your head down." Her throat tightened. She lowered her gaze again, staring at the floor. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that escape was possible, that hope was not a lie. But she had seen too much. She had watched entire towns burn. She had buried her family in silence, hiding from soldiers. She had lost everything. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. The man's voice grew firm but never cruel. "Then I'll show you, but first, heads up." This time she obeyed. Slowly she lifted her head. Her eyes met his through the bars, and for the first time in many years, she did not look away. The human reached into his jacket and pulled out a small tool. With a quiet click and a spark of light, the lock on the door released. The metal door swung open with a groan. Her breath caught. She looked at him in disbelief. "How did you—" He raised a finger to his lips, silencing her. "Later. Right now we move." He stepped into the cell and held out his hand. She hesitated. Her mind screamed at her that it was a trick, that it was impossible. But something deeper, buried under years of pain, told her to take it. Her hand trembled as she reached out. His grip was firm, steady, unshaken. The human pulled her to her feet. She stumbled, but he caught her. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Then walk with me," he said. They slipped into the corridor, moving in silence. The guards' voices echoed in the distance, but the human led her through the shadows, every step sure and deliberate. As they moved, she studied him. He was not taller than the guards, not stronger. His tools looked simple, his clothing worn. By all logic, he should have been no threat to the Empire. And yet he moved with such certainty, as if he carried with him a secret that no empire could break. She did not know what that secret was, but as she followed him through the cold prison halls, she felt something she had thought dead rise again in her chest. It was small, fragile, like the first spark of fire in dark ashes. But it was there. Hope. The prison corridors were endless and narrow. The walls were made of dull metal and the air smelled of oil and dust. The alien woman kept close behind the human as he moved quickly but quietly, his steps careful, his eyes sharp. She still did not know his name, and yet she followed him without question. Something about him felt steady, like a rope pulling her out of a deep pit. She whispered, "Where are we going?" The human turned his head slightly, his voice low. "Out, but not the front. Too many guards. We'll go through the service tunnels." She frowned. "You know this place well?" "Not well," he admitted, "but I learned fast." That answer made her pause. How could anyone survive here by simply learning fast? The Empire's prisons were made to crush even the strongest, and yet he walked as though he belonged in the shadows. A sound echoed down the hall, boots on metal. The human froze and raised his hand to signal silence. She held her breath as two guards passed by, talking in their own harsh language. When they turned the corner, the human moved again, quick and smooth, as if this was normal for him. Her mind spun with questions. Who was he? Why was he here? Why did he care if she lived or died? When they reached a junction, the human crouched near a panel in the wall. With his small tool, he opened it, revealing wires and circuits. His fingers moved fast, cutting and reconnecting lines with surprising skill. Sparks jumped, and suddenly, the lights in the corridor dimmed. The alien gasped softly. "What did you do?" "Distracted them," he said. "Cameras and alarms will flicker for a minute. Enough for us to move." She stared at him. He was not a soldier with heavy weapons, not a commander with great power. He was simply resourceful, clever. He used small things to fight against big things. They slipped through another corridor and entered a lower tunnel. Here the air was damp, and the sound of dripping water echoed. The human carried a small light, no larger than his palm, which glowed just enough to show their path. Finally, she asked the question that burned inside her. "Why are you helping me?" He kept walking, but answered without hesitation. "Because you're not done yet." She blinked. "Not done?" "Yes. You were ready to die back there, weren't you?" Her throat tightened. "Yes. I thought there was nothing else left." "Wrong," he said firmly. As long as you breathe, you're not done. His words sounded simple, even childish, yet the way he spoke made her feel something she could not explain. He did not say it with pride. He said it like it was a fact, unshakable and real. But the Empire, she began, isn't perfect, he interrupted. No empire is. They want you to think they are, but they're not. Every wall has a crack, you just have to find it. She fell silent, thinking about her people. For years they had fought the Empire with full strength, with armies and fleets, but they had been crushed. She remembered the screams, the flames, the endless losses. No one ever spoke of cracks in the Empire's walls. No one believed such cracks existed, and yet here was this human speaking as if he had seen them with his own eyes. They reached a sealed door at the end of the tunnel. The human knelt again, working with his tool. She watched him closely now, noticing how he moved with focus, how his mind worked faster than his hands. Finally, she asked, "What do they call you?" He glanced at her and gave a small smile. "Ash. Ash," she repeated, testing the sound. A strange name, short and simple, but it suited him, like the remains of fire, quiet but still carrying heat. "And you?" he asked. She hesitated. It had been so long since anyone asked her name. "Lyra," she said softly. Ash nodded. "Good, Lyra. Then let's make sure you live long enough to use that name again." The door clicked and slid open, revealing another passage. This one led downward into the deeper tunnels of the prison. The walls were rougher here, less polished, almost forgotten. As they moved, Lyra asked, "Are there more of you? More humans?" Ash gave a short laugh. "Oh yes, more than the Empire would like to believe. We're not everywhere, but where we are, we make noise." "Noise?" He grinned. "Trouble, resistance, whatever you want to call it." She shook, her head in disbelief. "Humans are new to the stars. How can you fight against the Empire? Even my people could not stand against them." Ash slowed and turned to face her. His eyes shone in the dim light, sharp and bright. "Because we don't stop. Even when we lose, we don't stop. That's the human way." His words stirred something in her again. They sounded reckless, even foolish. But there was strength in them, a strength she had not seen before. They pressed on until the tunnel opened into a large maintenance hall filled with pipes and humming machines. Ash checked the shadows carefully, then motioned for her to wait. He crept forward, scanned the area, then waved her through. As they crossed the hall, alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed, her heart froze. "They found us!" Ash grabbed, her arm pulling her behind a row of machines. "Not yet, but they will." From the far side of the hall, a squad of drones entered, their glowing eyes scanning the area. They moved on 4 legs, metal bodies clicking as they advanced. Lyra's breath quickened. "We can't fight them. There are too many." Ash crouched, low, thinking fast. His eyes darted across the hall, searching. Then he spotted a thick pipe above them, dripping with steam. He pulled out his tool and pointed upward. "See that?" "Yes." "If we break it, steam will flood this hall. The drones won't see us move." She looked at him in shock. "But the heat—" "Won't kill us if we move fast," Ash said. "But the drones, they'll choke. They can't handle it." Lyra hesitated, fear tightening her chest. Then she saw the calm in his face. He wasn't guessing. He believed in his own plan. "Trust me," he said. She nodded slowly. Ash climbed onto the machine, his hands steady as he worked on the pipe. Sparks flew, and with a loud hiss, the pipe burst. Thick steam poured into the hall, covering everything in a white cloud. "Move," Ash shouted. Lyra ran at his side, heat burning her skin, the air thick and wet. Shapes of drones flailed in the steam, their sensors blinded, their legs clanging against metal as they crashed into one another. Through the cloud, Ash led her to a hatch at the far wall. He forced it open, and together they slipped through, leaving the drones behind in confusion. They tumbled into another tunnel, coughing and gasping for air. Lyra pressed her back to the wall, her heart pounding. She looked at Ash, who was already on his feet again, wiping sweat from his brow. "You see?" he said with a grin. "Not stronger, just smarter." Lyra stared at him, stunned. You turned their own walls against them." "Exactly," he said. "That's the human way. We use what we have. We never stop moving." For the first time in years, Lyra felt something more than despair. She felt a spark of belief. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. As they walked deeper into the tunnel, Ash glanced at her. "You fought once, didn't you? Against the Empire?" Her chest tightened. "Yes. And we lost." He nodded. "Maybe. But you're still here. That means the fight isn't over. Not if you want it." She met his gaze, and though part of her wanted to argue, another part whispered that he was right. For the first time since her capture, she did not lower her head. She looked forward. The hidden outpost buzzed with quiet energy. Lyra had been among the humans and their allies for only a few days, yet she already felt the difference. They were not many, they were not well armed, and they had no great fleet. But every person in that place carried the same fire in their eyes, the fire to resist. She walked through the shelter's main hall, watching a group of humans fix a broken generator with parts that barely matched. Across the room, the scaled alien she had seen, earlier sharpened old blades humming a soft tune. A feathered fighter adjusted a rifle, its barrel patched with scraps. This was no mighty army. Yet somehow they believed they could fight the Empire. Ash stood near a table, a rough map spread across its surface. He waved Lyra over. "Come," he said. "We're planning something." She stepped closer. The map showed the nearby plains and mountains. Red marks indicated patrol routes while blue circles marked hidden paths. At the center was a large line, an Imperial convoy route. Ash tapped the line with his finger. "Tomorrow, an Imperial supply convoy will pass through. Here, weapons, fuel, and rations. Heavy guards, but not too many." Lyra frowned. "And you mean to attack it? With this small group?" Ash smiled. "Yes." She shook her head. "That is madness. You cannot fight their machines with scraps and courage." The scaled alien chuckled. "We've done it before." Ash leaned closer to the map. "It's not about matching their strength. It's about striking where they don't expect. Take their supplies, and they feel weak. Show others they can bleed, and they feel fear." Lyra's heart pounded. Her people had tried great battles and failed. Yet here the humans spoke of small, sharp strikes, like daggers in the dark. Ash looked at her. "We need your help. You know the Empire's ways. You've seen their convoys before." Her throat tightened. Memories of her people's last stand filled her mind. She had promised herself never to return to war. And yet, part of her whispered, "This is different. This is not armies. This is survival." She closed her eyes, then opened them slowly. "I will help." Ash nodded, his smile small but filled with trust. "Good. Then let's plan." The next day, the group moved before dawn. The sky was pale, and the plains stretched wide under the rising light. Lyra crouched behind a ridge with Ash and the others. In the distance, dust rose as the Imperial convoy rolled forward, 6 armored transports guarded by 2 drone carriers and squads of soldiers. The sight made Lyra's stomach twist. The Empire was always the same, cold, heavy, and overwhelming. She whispered, "We cannot win against that." Ash's voice was calm. "Not with brute force, but watch." He signaled to the feathered alien who carried a small device. With a soft click, the device sent a pulse through the air. Moments later, one of the drone carriers faltered, its engines sputtering. The machine drifted to the side, smoke rising. Convoy slowed, soldiers shouting in confusion. "Now," Ash whispered. The humans and their allies moved quickly. From hidden spots along the ridge, they hurled small charges onto the ground. Explosions cracked. Not strong enough to destroy the transports, but enough to block their path with fire and smoke. The convoy stopped, trapped between the ridge and the flames. Soldiers scrambled, forming lines. Ash leapt to his feet, raising his voice. Go! The resistance charged down the slope. Lyra's heart pounded as she followed. Fear clawed at her, but Ash's steady stride pulled her forward. Blaster fire lit the air. The Empire's soldiers shot wildly into the smoke. But the resistance moved fast, darting between rocks, never standing still. Lyra remembered Ash's words, not stronger, smarter. She ducked behind a fallen boulder, her chest heaving. For a moment, panic rose. The Empire's line was too strong. They would be crushed. Then, through the chaos, she heard Ash's voice ring out. Heads up! The word struck her like lightning. She lifted her gaze and saw him charging forward, not recklessly, but with purpose. He used the smoke as cover, sliding between blasts, tossing a charge beneath a transport. The vehicle shook, its wheels snapping. Soldiers stumbled in confusion. Something inside Lyra ignited. She grabbed a fallen soldier's staff, its end glowing with energy. Rising from behind the boulder, she shouted with a voice she thought she had lost. Forward! The scaled alien roared in agreement, charging at her side. The feathered fighter spread its wings and fired bursts into the convoy. Humans darted in close, pulling soldiers down, disarming them with speed. Lyra swung the staff, striking an armored soldier across the chest. He fell, and she pressed on, each step filled with fire. The convoy descended into chaos. Drones spun wildly, blinded by smoke. Transports shook under the Resistance's charges. Soldiers panicked as the attackers struck from all sides. For the first time since her capture, Lyra felt alive. Not just surviving, not just running, but fighting. At the height of the battle, she stumbled. A soldier aimed at her, weapon glowing. Fear froze her, until Ash appeared, pulling her aside. The blast struck the ground where she had stood. You all right? He asked quickly. Her breath shook. Yes. Good, Ash said, giving her a firm nod. Then keep going. We're not done yet. With renewed strength, she pressed forward. Together, the resistance broke through the convoy's line. One by one, the Empire soldiers fell or fled. Finally, silence spread across the smoke-filled field. The convoy lay in ruins. Transports smoldered, soldiers scattered, and the resistance stood victorious. Lyra dropped the staff, her hands trembling. She stared at the wreckage, unable to believe it. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. The scaled alien laughed loudly, raising his arms. Victory! The feathered one let out a sharp cry of triumph. The humans cheered, their voices fierce and proud. Ash turned to Lyra, his face calm but his eyes shining. You see? They can be beaten. Her heart pounded. Yes, she whispered. They can bleed. The resistance quickly gathered supplies from the wrecked transports. Weapons, fuel, food, all were pulled away and loaded into hidden carriers. The victory was not just survival, it was a step forward. As they worked, Lyra stood apart for a moment, staring at the smoke rising into the sky. That smoke would carry across the plains. Others would see it. Others would whisper about it. For the first time in years, she did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like part of something larger. Ash walked up beside her, his voice quiet. You led them today. She shook her head. I only followed. No, he said firmly. When you shouted, they followed. That's leadership. She looked at him, unsure what to say. But deep inside, she knew he was right. The fire inside her was no longer a spark. It was growing, spreading. That night, back at the outpost, the resistance celebrated. Lyra sat by the fire, listening to their laughter, their stories, their songs. She smiled faintly, though her heart was heavy with memories of those she had lost. Ash sat beside her, offering a small cup of water. You're thinking of your people, he said gently. Yes, she whispered. They would not believe this. They thought the Empire was endless. Ash gazed at the flames. Endless things can still end. All it takes is enough cracks. Lyra watched the fire dance, the warmth brushing her face. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where the Empire was not eternal. Perhaps, one day her people could rise again, and perhaps with humans at their side that day would come sooner than she dared dream. The tunnels seemed endless, but Ash walked with confidence, his small light leading the way. Lyra followed closely, still shaken from their escape but more alert than before. Every step she took, she expected the Empire's soldiers to appear, yet none came. The sound of alarms faded behind them, replaced only by the soft hum of machinery deep within the walls. Finally, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber. Rusted beams crossed the ceiling, and old cargo crates lay stacked in corners. A faint breeze drifted through a grate high on the wall. Ash scanned the room, then motioned for her to sit. "Rest a little," he said. Lyra lowered herself onto a crate, her legs trembling. "You act as if you know these tunnels well." Ash gave a small shrug. "I don't. But I've been in enough prisons to know they all follow the same idea. A place like this always has forgotten paths." His words made her stare. "You've been in prisons before?" He chuckled softly. "Too many. Humans aren't exactly friends with empires. We don't like being ruled." Lyra tilted her head. She had heard fragments of rumors about humans, strange newcomers from a small world, too bold for their size, too stubborn for their weakness. Many in the galaxy thought they were reckless. Yet here she was, alive because of one. "You speak of humans as if they are different from others," she said carefully. Ash sat across from her, leaning against a crate. "Maybe we are. Not stronger, not smarter than everyone else, but when things break, when things fall apart, we don't give up. We keep going, even if it looks foolish." His eyes were steady, his voice simple. He spoke without pride, as if describing the most ordinary truth. Lyra lowered her gaze. "My people once thought like that. We believed we could fight, that we could stand, but when the Empire came with fire, everything ended. We lost not just our homes, we lost our will." Ash nodded slowly. "I know that pain. My own world was once close to breaking. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we even reached the stars, but we learned. The lesson was simple. If you give up, then you are already finished. If you stand, you might still fall, but you might also rise." His words struck her deeply. She had not spoken of her world to anyone since its fall, yet here was a human, a stranger, speaking as if he carried the same scars. Before she could answer, a faint signal buzzed from a device on Ash's belt. He pulled out a small communicator, tapped it, and whispered, "It's Ash. I've got one. With me." A voice crackled back, low and careful. "Coordinates?" Ash glanced around, then gave details of their location. He clipped the device back and looked at her. "Friends are near. They'll meet us outside these tunnels." Lyra blinked. "Friends? More humans?" "Yes," Ash said with a smile. "Not many, but enough." Her chest tightened. The thought of more like him, more humans who refused to kneel, both frightened and excited her. They rested only a short while before Ash led her onward. The tunnels grew wider, then finally ended at a rusted hatch. With effort, he pushed it open and cool night air rushed in. Lyra gasped as she stepped outside for the first time since her capture. Above them, the sky stretched wide and star-filled. The Empire's prison had been buried beneath a barren plain, and now they stood on rough soil under the pale light of moons. For a moment, Lyra simply breathed, the air sharp and free. Ash glanced around, then whistled softly. From the shadows of nearby rocks, figures emerged. At first, Lyra tensed, thinking they were soldiers, but these were not in Imperial armor. Their clothes were mixed, patched, and worn, some clearly not human. There were 4 of them, 2 humans, a scaled alien with bright eyes, and a tall, feathered one carrying a rifle. "Good to see you back, Ash," one of the humans said, grinning. And you brought company. Ash nodded toward Lyra. She needed saving. The group studied her with curiosity, but none looked at her with pity or contempt. Instead, they nodded in quiet welcome. Lyra stood uncertainly, her voice low. You are a resistance? The scaled alien chuckled. A small one, but yes, humans and whoever else chooses to stand with them. Ash guided her forward. We don't fight with big fleets or great weapons. We strike where it hurts. We remind the Empire they are not untouchable. The feathered alien spoke in a calm, deep tone. And we remind the broken that they are not alone. Lyra felt her chest tighten again. For years she had believed her. People's spirit was gone forever. Yet these strangers from different worlds spoke as if unity and defiance were still possible. They began their journey across the plain, heading toward a hidden outpost. Lyra walked among them silently, listening as they exchanged quiet plans. She heard mentions of stolen supplies, sabotaged convoys, freed captives. They spoke not as conquerors but as survivors who chose to fight. At last they reached a rocky hill. Ash tapped a coded rhythm on the stone, and a hidden door slid open, leading into a concealed shelter. Inside, dim lights revealed a small base, built from scrap metal and stolen parts. It was no great fortress, yet it pulsed with life. Humans and a few aliens moved about, repairing equipment, cooking meals, checking weapons. The air buzzed with quiet determination. Lyra stood at the entrance, overwhelmed. This is all you have? Ash smiled faintly. All we need. He led her through the outpost, showing her the maps scratched onto walls, the supplies neatly stacked, the small but strong machines built from scraps. Every piece spoke of survival, of creativity, of refusing to quit even with nothing. Finally, they sat at a round table. A few others joined, curious about her. Ash introduced her simply. This is Lyra. She fought the Empire once. She'll fight again. Lyra's eyes widened. I did not say. Ash met her gaze calmly. Not with words. But I saw it. You lifted your head. The table grew quiet. All eyes were on her. She felt heat rise in her chest, a weight pressing against her. For so long she had hidden, bowed, waiting for death. Now they looked at her as if she still had worth. Her voice shook. I don't know if I can fight again. Ash leaned forward, his tone steady. You don't have to know. You just have to try. That's the human way. The words hung in the air. Simple, direct, but powerful. Memories of her people's defeat filled her mind. The burning skies, the silence afterward. Yet sitting here among humans and others who refused to bow, she felt something stir. A tiny spark, fragile, but real. That night she could not sleep. She lay in the shelter, staring at the ceiling, hearing the quiet hum of machines and whispers of those who kept watch. Ash's words repeated in her mind. Not done. Heads up. The human way. She rose and walked outside, standing under the stars. For the first time since her capture, she imagined a different future, not one where she simply died quietly, but one where she stood again. In the distance, the Empire's patrol ships flew across the sky, bright like falling stars. Once, the sight would have filled her with despair. But now, as the cold night air brushed against her skin, she whispered to herself, they can bleed. Behind her, Ash stepped out, his hands in his pockets. Couldn't sleep? She shook her head. He smiled faintly. Good. Means you're thinking. And when you think about fighting again, it means the fire isn't gone. She looked at him, searching his face. Why do you believe so strongly? Because if I don't, he said softly, then no one will. Someone has to start. Why not me? Why not us? Her heart trembled, but this time it was not with fear. It was with something new. Perhaps the fire was not gone. Perhaps it had only been hidden, waiting for a spark. And maybe, just maybe, humans were that spark. The galaxy was vast, dark, and full of fear. The Empire ruled with iron and fire, crushing worlds that dared to resist. Lyra had seen this power close, had felt it in her bones, had thought it was endless. Yet here she stood, among humans and allies, and she felt something she had never felt before. Hope. The success of the ambush on the Imperial convoy had spread quickly through whispers. Other oppressed planets, other captured peoples had heard of it. A small group, humans and freed aliens, had struck where the Empire was strongest and survived. Not only survived, but won. In the hidden outpost, the air buzzed with energy. Supplies were being reorganized, weapons repaired, and plans discussed for the next strike. Lyra moved among the group, helping to check equipment and ensuring that everyone had what they needed. Ash approached her, a quiet smile on his face. "They're talking about us," he said. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Other prisoners, other worlds. Word spreads fast. They call humans unpredictable, reckless. But when they strike, they remind everyone that the Empire is not unbreakable." She listened, feeling warmth spread in her chest. Her people had once believed the Empire was unbeatable. Now she understood something new. Strength was not only in numbers or weapons, but in courage, cleverness, and refusal to surrender. The humans gathered around a table, showing maps of supply routes, patrol schedules, and weak points. Lyra added what she knew of the Empire's tactics, pointing out hidden paths, guards' habits, and patterns in their patrols. For the first time, she felt useful, not just a survivor, but someone who could fight back. Ash watched her quietly, then said, "You've changed since you arrived." She looked at him. I feel different." "You should," he said. "You lifted your head. That's the first step. After that, everything else can follow." The next strike was planned carefully. Lyra had learned quickly from Ash and the other humans. She now knew how to move without being seen, how to anticipate soldiers' actions, and how to turn even a small advantage into a victory. When the day of the ambush arrived, the convoy was larger than the first, carrying not only weapons and supplies but captives taken from a nearby colony. Lyra's heart tightened as she saw them, heads bowed in despair. She knew what it was to feel that way, to believe no one would save you. Ash placed a hand on her shoulder. "Heads up," he whispered, just as he had on the day of her rescue. She swallowed hard and lifted her head. The words carried a new meaning now. They were not just encouragement. They were a promise. A whisper that even in the darkest moments someone could stand and act. The ambush began with careful precision. Small charges disabled one transport, forcing the soldiers to focus there. Humans and their allies struck from multiple directions, using smoke, mirrors, and speed. Lyra led a small team along a hidden path, cutting off reinforcements and freeing the captives. She moved among them quickly, guiding them away from danger. One young alien boy clutched her hand, wide-eyed and trembling. "Will we be safe?" he asked. "Yes," she said firmly. "Follow me. Keep your heads up." The boy looked at her with hope for the first time. Lyra realized that hope was not a gift. They had to show it, fight for it. The battle was fierce, yet the humans' strategies proved successful again. The convoy fell into chaos. Soldiers scattered, and the freed captives ran toward safety under Lyra's guidance. At the climax, Lyra saw a group of soldiers about to trap Ash. Without thinking, she charged, using smoke and debris to create confusion. Ash saw her action and nodded approvingly before taking advantage of the distraction to disable the soldiers' weapons. Together, they turned what could have been disaster into victory. When the battle ended, Lyra stood on a ridge, overlooking the plains. The Empire's forces had been pushed back, their convoy destroyed or captured. The freed captives gathered around, their faces bright with relief. Lyra felt a warmth she had not felt in years, satisfaction, pride, and a quiet joy. Ash approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You see?" he said softly. "They can be beaten, and you helped make it happen." She nodded, looking out at the horizon. Yes. Yes, they can. Around the outpost, humans and freed aliens celebrated quietly. No loud songs or grand displays. This was not the time for boasting. They had survived, they had won, and most importantly, they had given hope to others. Lyra realized something important. The Empire was vast, powerful, and cruel, but no power could crush the human spirit. Humans had no superweapons, no vast fleets, yet they were unstoppable in a way the Empire had not understood. They never gave up, they never bowed completely, and they lifted others when they could. Over the following days, Lyra traveled with Ash and the group to neighboring settlements. Wherever they went, whispers spread. Captives who had been bowed in despair now raised their heads. Small resistance groups formed. Humans became symbols, strange, fearless outsiders who refused to bow and taught others to do the same. Lyra shared her knowledge freely. She guided groups on how to avoid patrols, how to use the environment, and how to strike with cleverness rather than force. Every success added to the growing legend of the human-led resistance. One night, as they rested under the stars, Lyra looked at Ash. "You whispered to me once," she said softly, "when I thought I would die. Heads up. That changed everything." Ash smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "And now you whisper it to others. The spark spreads, Lyra. That's all humans ever need. A spark." She nodded. The memory of her own despair, the endless nights of fear, now seemed like a shadow behind her. She was no longer broken. She was part of something larger, something alive, something that refused to be crushed. Weeks later, in a faraway prison, another alien sat in a dark cell. Their head was bowed, their eyes filled with hopelessness. The Empire's guards walked past, laughing as usual, certain the prisoner would remain defeated. Then a shadow appeared at the bars. A soft voice whispered, familiar yet strange, "Heads up." The prisoner looked up, startled. A figure stepped forward, simple and unarmed, but radiating determination. The same human spirit that had saved Lyra was here again, showing that even the smallest act of courage could ignite change. The prisoner's eyes widened as hope returned. They felt something long lost, the chance to stand, to fight, to lift their head and see the world with new eyes. And across the galaxy the whispers spread. One victory became two, two became 10, 10 became countless. The Empire still ruled, but it was no longer unchallenged. Humans and those inspired by them moved quietly yet powerfully through the stars, carrying one simple truth. Even in darkness, even when all seems lost, a head held high can change everything. Lyra stood on a ridge overlooking the horizon with Ash by her side. The sun rose, casting light across the plains. She felt the warmth of the day, the warmth of hope and the knowledge that her people could rise again. Ash placed a hand on her shoulder. "The fire is not gone," he said. She smiled faintly, finally understanding. "No, it never was. It just needed someone to whisper, 'Heads up.'" And with that, the galaxy waited quietly for the spark to become a flame.